This is Duke Machado with GOPisForMe. Today we interviewed Republican candidate Tom Pauken. He's running for governor of the state of Texas. We got into border security. We talked about the future of education, how it should be funded. We talked about taxes and eliminating certain departments. This was a very informative and casual conversation, a great one-on-one with Tom Pauken.
You know, when you think about some of the scenarios that we're facing and kind of get down to its simple terms, you know, we have this issue of immigration that's on the table right now. Tell me what your vision is for how we solve our illegal immigration problem for those living here, and how we move forward with border security and things like that.
Well, I don't believe, I just do not support the Schumer bill. I mean, it doesn't address the issue of securing the border. And having watched the results of amnesty when it was put in place in 1986, clearly that did not work. I'd be open to a guest worker program where people could come in, get work, go home to Mexico. As an example, very similar to what President Eisenhower put in place back during his administration in the 1950s. It was called the Bracero program. Unfortunately, the AFL-CIO killed that program. But I do think that you don't reward people who violate the law. And it's an extraordinarily difficult issue. But my focus as governor would be on, border security. What can we do here in Texas to secure our border better? I don't have confidence in Janet Napolitano and Homeland Security, that we can simply lob the ball to them and they're going to take care of it. I think there are technological developments that are out there that will allow us to do much more in terms of securing our own borders, number one. Number two, we've got a serious problem with the influx of the drug cartels into our state. You had a recent example of a killing of one of the, almost like a mob killing up in South Lake, of all places, in the DFW area, of someone who was connected with these cartels operating out of Mexico, but that have infiltrated and infiltrated here in Texas. And I think you need a very sophisticated intelligence operation to identify them and figure how to roll them up. And I think the state ought to do that. I spent 3 years in the military and Army intelligence. As my friends say, I'm an oxymoron military intelligence officer, but did learn a lot of experience, if you will, from having served in Vietnam. And I think what you do is you go out and identify the best and most knowledgeable people that you can bring to bear with civilian and or military experience in dealing with such matters. And Texas just has to take the lead. And we're not doing anything substantively on that front under the current leadership. And on the border, look at the technology that's out there that may allow us here in Texas to secure the border. So my thoughts would be to bring together a group of knowledgeable people with military and or civilian background to address both of those issues, which are significant issues. And I just, I think that I'd rather be concerned with, people in our own state who are here legally and trying to help them with a hand up rather than a hand out. That's why I've emphasized more opportunities for vocational and technical education. And as Texas Workforce Commission chairman, I fought for that for 4 years. And we put a coalition together to finally get that done so that there can be multiple pathways to a high school degree. For whatever reason, we neglected vocational education over the past decade, pushing everybody to go to a 4-year university, and one size doesn't fit all, and all this teaching to the test with the TOS and then the TOX and then the STAR test. And a lot of these kids, they failed the test in high school, so they just drop out of school. They're not going to go on to college, but they're a good part of the reason they're not given an opportunity for vocational and technical education courses, and those are great jobs awaiting people with the skills out there. And we got a graying workforce. The average age of a welder is 56, of a plumber 55, of a stonemasonry craftsman 69 years of age. And you can come out of Craft Training Center in Corpus Christi with a welding certificate and be making $1,700 a week, or you can make $75,000 after 3 years as a plumber, or $68,000 coming out of Texas State Technical College there in Waco, starting at $68,000 a year with an engineering-related technology degree in instrumentation, a 2-year degree, and starting the petrochemical industry at that salary level. So tremendous opportunities out there, and we really have neglected vocational education. So I think that's an area that I would really focus on with an emphasis, if you will, on pathway to jobs for young Texans who are in our state, and many of whom wind up dropping out of school and getting into gangs because they're not given a sensible alternative to this idea everybody should go to a 4-year university.
This is Duke Machado with GOP is for me. We'll be right back with our interview with Tom Pauken. Learn more about GOP is for me by visiting our website, GOPisForMe.com. GOPisForMe.com.
So, if you said a lot. You said a lot in that segment, and I appreciate you just sharing and covering all those topics. I kind of want to go back and revisit them and ask a few specific questions and just kind of drill down a little bit. And because I think what everyone's tired of is we're told one thing and then something else happens. The frustration that our wishes aren't being adhered to. Our desire at the ballot doesn't show in Washington. So people are looking for solutions. People, I mean, that's kind of how I see it. You've always.
I'm frustrated too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm tired of career politicians. They just give us the rhetoric and nothing, and then everything is on autopilot. And it was different when I was in the Reagan Administration. We were serious about getting things done. But one of the biggest shocks to me coming back into government, when I was asked by the governor to chair the Texas Workforce Commission in 2008, was it's on autopilot. And you got governance by sound bites, not governance by sound policy. And you got it from, I hate to say it, the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. They're good at throwing out red meat to quote the peasants. But the reality is you got Austin insiders and special interests and kind of an attitude of the bureaucracy running the trains in Austin, and it's business as usual and don't rock the boat.
So what would you do to change that? I mean, what you just...
Well, I've already rocked the boat because I had no support from Rick Perry when I led an effort to put a coalition together of business people, educators, Republicans and Democrats to go to a multiple pathway approach to a high school diploma, to recognize that being career ready is just as valid as being college ready, and getting away from this top-down, state-controlled teaching to the test system, which has been in place for more than a decade. So you've just got to be willing to talk to people, listen to what they're saying. Employers were telling me about the problems they had in getting skilled workers. Educators were telling me about the kids that were bored to death and didn't see education's relevant to them and dropping out of school. I was with an African-American 9th grade principal in Beaumont, Texas, and she said, "Tom, what you're talking about is what we need. Our kids we're losing these kids, and all this silly college-ready testing business, as opposed to getting them the fundamentals and giving them an opportunity to learn a skill or move in a direction that they have a talent in and an interest in." And it doesn't mean pushing people in a certain direction. I mean, at one point we had tracking in Texas, and that was bad. But the current tracking in Texas is what I call the dropout track, and that has to change. And you've got to give people a choice. So it shows that you can get some things done if you have good sound ideas, and that you pull coalitions together. We had parents behind us. We had educators. We had a cross-section of the legislators. I worked with Senator Eddie Lucio from the Valley, African-American State Representative Joe Desatel from Beaumont, Bill Caligari from Katy, The author of the legislation in the House was Jimmy Don Aycock from Central Texas. There were a whole bunch of people. We might disagree on certain individual issues, but on this issue we came together. It was a powerful coalition. So it shows that good ideas can come up, can actually result in legislation and be implemented. And that's what the Republicans are in charge of governance. We're here in Texas, and it's easy to bash Obama, but what are we doing about governing here in Texas?
You're listening to GOP is for Me, an interview with Tom Pauken. Please visit our website, GOPisForMe.com, and type in stepping stones in the keyword section. This is our mentor program. Check us out, GOPisForMe.com.
Well, and so let's talk about some examples of what that might entail. You were talking about let's not rely on the federal government to secure our borders. Well, the federal government, they're allotting $6.5 billion to secure the southern border.
Yeah, I don't know the exact figure, but I do know that. I'll give you an example of something we could do here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Perry has a fund. I call it the Emerging Technology Fund. Well, what it is it's a public venture capital fund. I was in the private sector venture capital business. It's hard enough to make money there. I don't believe our tax dollars should be used to invest in companies, and that's precisely what's happened, to pick winners and losers. There's heavy politics involved, just like when Obama has done it with Solyndra and other companies where they're making investments. And then, by the way, I think the rate of returns for the Obama investments are very bad, and I suspect the rate of returns on the Emerging Technology Fund are negligible at best. I didn't favor the bailout of the too-big-to-fail financial institutions when it was done by Bill Clinton when he was president, or by George Bush when he was president. And I don't like the idea of picking winners and losers. And so I would say take the $50 million as governor, day one. I'll eliminate the Emerging Technology Fund and deploy that to helping to secure our border. And there are technological developments that are out there, I have been told by knowledgeable people, and you've got to verify this and make sure you've got the right team of people to implement it, that could go a long way to helping using technology to help better secure our border down there.
So to those who might be tuning in for the first time to a serious discussion on how that might take place, I would, if you could describe some specific technologies and how they might be put in place.
Again, as I said, and I don't want to be premature here. You hear from different people who have been in military and civilian services involved in technological development. But I am told that technology is there where you can identify people well before they're actually crossing into the Texas border. You can see the path of progress as they come through Mexico, and they're not all coming from Mexico, as a friend of mine pointed out who was near the border last few weeks. They picked up some documentation of somebody coming in from the Middle East. They come in from the Middle East, from China, many different locales around the world, but identify them before before they're near or at the border, or before they've actually crossed the border, so that at the time of passing, it'll be easier to round up those people and make sure they don't make it past the border.
We're having a great interview with Republican candidate for governor, Tom Pauken. This is Casey Kelly performing Train Town. He's going to be performing along with Donna Beckham at the the ballpark at Arlington, July 6th. Tribute to West. Back to our interview with Tom Pauken.
some people have a vision of big fences with armed guards on top, like North Korea or something like that.
I don't think you need a big fence. I mean, from what I've been told, I don't think you do.
So you just have. Would you be in favor of setting up maybe military facilities or training camps?
I could see using our Texas National Guard to address the issue, but I think that what you've got to do is use the technology to identify where the crossing points are and who is crossing, and be able to determine it before they're across the border. And I just think it could be a more effective than what we're doing now. I'm not talking about an end-all or be-all, but clearly these are our borders, and we've got to figure out how to protect them. And we can't rely on an administration which, with a wink and a nod, acts as though they're doing something about it, but at the same time, you have people who are border patrol agents essentially saying we're being deprived of the resources to actually do our job. So there is a problem here. I mean, we've just got to understand that, Texas has to deal with it ourselves. We can't just simply say, well, that's a national problem. It is a national problem, but if the federal government isn't going about it the right way, then we have a responsibility to step in. And particularly if we can do it on an affordable basis. And I'm told we can. Now, I don't want to rush to judgment here. I'm the type of person that says, okay, let's get knowledgeable people together and let's get people who have different opinions in the same room and argue this out.
What do you think? What do you think? Who would you gather in that room, and what would you do with? So I guess you would take their input and craft something.
Yeah, you would take. I would say you want people who are officials along the border. You want people who have prior federal law enforcement experience and military experience dealing with perimeter issues. You want people with high-tech capability in terms of what are the technological tools that can be used to help us in controlling our borders. Get all of the people involved and essentially try to put someone in charge of that task force with the requisite background knowledge, maybe a CEO who's retired from a company but who has a lot of knowledge along those lines, and then bring people together and try to come up with a plan or a strategy. I mean, that's what we did that's what you got to do on issue after issue. Let's just not talk about immigration. I mean, it's what we did on what became House Bill 5. I mean, we put coalitions together. We put a strategy and a policy in place. We looked at Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. It's what I learned in business a long time ago. It's what I learned running a federal agency for President Reagan. It's sort of like, okay, if you do this, what are some of the unintended consequences that might happen that are negative? And how do we deal with that? You've got to think ahead. You've got to be proactive. But it's not that complicated, unfortunately. And with all due respect to Rick Perry and Greg Abbott, they're out there with their consultants, giving good messages to appeal to the choir, but they don't work day in and day out on developing sound strategies for the future of our state. And I've been down there 5 years. Look, I wouldn't be running for governor if I thought either one of them thought in these terms. But I've been very disappointed in what I've seen. They're good at raising money. They're good as career politicians. They've been there a long time. But they're not, they've exhibited to me no seriousness in terms of, okay, how do we address this issue? How do we address, for example, the issue of school finance, which is bogged down in the courts? I led the fight against the Robin Hood school finance scheme when Ann Richards tried to put it in with a constitutional amendment. It takes money from local school property taxes from some districts, redistributes them to other districts, so-called property-rich districts to property-poor districts, with the state as the redistribution agency. Texans Against Robin Hood Taxes was the organization I formed and led, and we defeated it by 2-1. Well, she goes back in and puts it in legislatively, and 2 governors later, nobody's done anything about it. It's still there. Rick Perry and Greg Abbott defend it. And now it amounts to $1.1 billion of local school property taxes taken from 374 districts and shipped elsewhere. And this, to me, is a violation of the state state prohibition against a statewide property tax. That's what we have right now, and yet nothing has been done about it. And I will lay out a solution to get the $1.1 billion to the property poor districts through an expanded sales tax or a slightly higher sales tax, and get rid of the $1.1 billion in property taxes that are being redistributed today, and allow local property taxes at our schools, in our municipalities, in our county governments to stay local.
We're having a great interview with Republican candidate for Governor Tom Pauken. If you don't have anything scheduled for July 6th, Lake Whitney Chamber of Commerce hosting first annual Lake Whitney Music Fest. Bands from around the country, independent artists, singer-songwriter, and musicians like Stuart Ray playing now. Come on out, have a good time, bring your lawn chairs. $7 to get in, $10 per couple. It's going to be a good time. Lots of patriots. Visit hitmusiclink.com for more information.
Mm-hmm. So that 1.1 billion that you're talking about, what does that translate to in an increase to the average homeowner?
Well, it's in a lot as a result of that 1.1 billion. You're getting a lot of people who are double taxed. They're paying for school property taxes in their district, and then they're seeing their property taxes increased, and they go elsewhere. And you have no control over it. I mean, you can say there are districts where they overspend. But if you've got local property taxes staying where they are, then the local voters have an opportunity to throw the people out of office who are spending too much money. But if your local school property taxes are taken from your district and shipped elsewhere, you have no control over how that money is being spent. Mm-hmm. I'll give you, and the reason why I think we can get some things done this next legislative session, if we have any kind of real leadership, is because right now, property poor districts a few years ago with the energy boom, say South Texas, the Eagle Ford shale find, all of a sudden some property poor school districts in South Texas are now property rich, and the people in those districts, the superintendents and others, are saying, well, maybe this Robin Hood school finance scheme isn't all so good. It isn't so good after all, and they're open to an alternative solution, but there's no leadership coming out of Rick Perry or Greg Abbott on that issue. And
so you're not saying defund those schools. You're saying just get it in a different way.
Yeah, get the $1.1 billion to the property poor districts in a different way. Don't take local property taxes away from some districts, resulting in double property taxation of those people. And what happens? Let's say you got an energy find in a district, but most of the people are still poor in that area. Well, guess what? Their property taxes on their homes and on their property have just gone way up, and they're not getting any additional benefits. I mean, it isn't a fair system. I mean, what happens if you're property poor and happen to live in a property rich district? You're double taxed. This is an inequitable system at its core, and nobody's doing anything about it, and it needs to go.
I was talking with a teacher here at Waco Independent School District. So he was saying that the major problem is parents. Parents are not engaging their kids. They're not preparing them in any sort of way, that there is this major deficiency in students' preparedness. And, how is it something that, maybe the leader of the state could influence or change, or, what would you say to parents, Hispanic, Black, white, all parents, in living in these economically challenged times and who may not be putting the effort into raising their children? I mean, how do you inspire someone to engage their kids?
Well, that's a great question, and here's the problem. The problem is we have, in many ways, a dysfunctional culture with the breakup of the intact family that's hitting across the board. You can't have the idea government's going to solve that problem, and that isn't going to happen. I think a governor can use the bully pulpit. I think that we need to have family-friendly policies in place to encourage intact families. I think you've got examples out there that need to be recognized and applauded. In my book, Bringing America Home, for example, I talk about Booker T. Washington and what he did at Tuskegee at a time of segregation in this society. But his attitude was he was teaching the kids, and by the way, students there built that university brick by brick themselves. But his idea was a hand up, not a handout, getting people to be self-sufficient and building families. And I think the government, with its welfare policies and policies of dependency, have really hurt and made things worse. What we have to do is encourage work, provide incentives for work, and less incentives, if you will, for the breakup of families. And when you've got a welfare system that incentivizes people not to be married, there's something fundamentally wrong with it.
I know it seems sometimes that we lose control of everything. It's okay. Just put the nice, relaxing elevator music on. Let all your worries fade away. And we'll continue with Tom Pauken, candidate for governor.
What's your view on funding schools? Do you like the concept of a large growth of charter schools? Do you want more independent operators in public education? What's your view on that?
Yeah, look, 90% of the kids are educated in our public schools. We need to have our primary focus on improving our public schools, and one of the ways to do it is we began with the passage of HB 5 is return to more local control of schools and recognition that one size doesn't fit all. I do believe that education is one of the essential services of the state of Texas and deserves adequate funding. But it's not just a matter of money. It's a matter of, I look back in my history, and I have a daughter who teaches, who's a very good teacher. And it was teachers who made the difference in my life, good teachers in our educational system. So we've got to encourage, if you will, an educational system here in Texas which recognizes the value of good teachers, strong principals, and good superintendents or administrators with a lean administrative operation, as opposed to a tendency on the part of certain folks to build up, kind of an administrative empire, and that doesn't really go to what is at the bottom line. What it's all about is educating young people for success in life. So I think the primary emphasis has to be on public schools. I'm open to charter schools, but it's not an end-all, be-all. There's some problems with some of the charter schools that are out there, and I just think you have to figure out, let's put our primary emphasis on improving our public schools, and at the same time identifying the good charter schools and encouraging them, but recognizing there's some problem charter schools, and those problems need to be addressed.
Well, we have, it seems like, I've just mentioned a few, we've had a long discussion about 2 or 3 topics. That there's a lot at stake. What beyond that? Tell me what you see as some of the primary challenges if you were to be elected. And the election is.
March is the Republican primary.
March is we're running 2014.
Right, 2014. March 2014 is the Republican primary, and I'm I've got to run in just a couple of minutes, but let me briefly, in closing, say here, I would bring a team of people from across the state, a group of outsiders, if you will, with knowledge and experience, bring them into Austin, put together a nonpartisan commission similar to what we did in the Reagan Administration. We called it the Grace Commission, to take a look at all of the agencies and departments of state government during the transition period, identify what are essential services, what are non-essential services, put strategies and policies in place to do more with less, to make sure we don't spend, more than what we have. I mean, this session of the legislature, the attitude seemed to be, well, we've got more revenue, so let's spend it all. We should have a budget-driven process, not a revenue-driven process. And I think our spending should be limited to no higher at the state level than inflation plus population growth. And that's what I would put in place as governor, and make sure that we're focused on spending where it ought to be. There's too much crony capitalism and too much of this picking winners and losers. There have been problems with the cancer fund where the politicians have supported commercialization grants for contributors. You've had problems with the Emerging Technology Fund. That stuff needs to end. This crony capitalism, which has seeped into our state, just like it has nationally. And you've just got to have a government that is hopefully led by people who understand we're servants of the people, as opposed to Austin insiders, and it's all about them. And I think that we can't just, Texas is doing great in so many ways, but we've got to look beyond today. If we're stuck on today, we could wake up with some nasty surprises 4 or 5 years from now. So we've got to plan for tomorrow. And that's what I would do as governor. And I would also put back in place an authentic conservatism and bring together a team of people who will work together, and rather than a party that is very divided, as the Republican Party is divided, and also recognize the importance of bringing in key Hispanic leaders from across the state who share our values and ought to be part of the solution and part of the leadership team. I mean, even in Central Texas, you have Felipe Reagan, an outstanding former judge, Abel Rania, who's the district attorney in McLennan County. But I think of Felipe, some of the Republican elitists went after him when he didn't toe the line. Well, that's not what leadership is about, of just saluting when the big boys tell you what to do. Real leadership is about standing up for what you believe in and working together and being willing to work through our differences of opinions on certain things in order to find common solutions. And that's what's missing. There's this top-down state government, and if you don't go along, you're not on the team, and you're going to pay a price. Well, I don't believe in that style of governance, and I don't believe that helps the people out there who just simply want a government that serves the people, not a government of special interest and insiders, and one that is driven by the big money contributors to the candidates.
Well, I think that's a message that's going to resonate on both sides of the aisle. I would say that everyone should want that sort of style of government. Definitely less is better in this case.
Duke, I enjoyed being with you.
Absolutely. It was a great visit, and you stay safe on the road, and we will have this posted. Duke Machado, okay. GOP is for me, and we're out of here.
Thank you, Duke.
All right, bye-bye.
This is Duke Machado with GOP is for me. Today we interviewed Republican candidate Tom Pauken. He's running for governor of the state of Texas. We got into border security. We talked about the future of education, how it should be funded. We talked about taxes and eliminating certain departments. This was a very informative and casual conversation, a great one-on-one with Tom Pauken.